Hello and welcome to your favorite weekly program on Science and Technology, Science Monitor. I'm Aishwarya Kapoor. Before we move ahead, let's have a quick look at the highlights. Countdown of India's Mars orbiter mission starts. Researchers of IISER develop liquid crystal gel to detect bacterial contamination. New study reveals that 3 different species of Hanuman Language exist in India. Earth's ozone layer repairing itself, say experts. And in today's In Focus, we will learn more about our neighboring planet, Mars. And now news in details. India's ambitious Mars orbiter mission has reached its final stage. After a successful 300-day voyage covering 666 million kilometers in space, the spacecraft is all set to be inserted into the Martian orbit. The country and the world has its eyes fixed on this one-of-its-kind scientific feat. We present you a report.
India's ambitious project, the Mars orbiter mission, is close to ending its journey as researchers at ISRO prepare for the insertion of the Mangalyaan into the orbit of Mars on 24th September at 7:30 a.m. The Indian spacecraft has reached the red planet Mars and is ready for exploration after traveling for 300 days and covering a distance of 666 million kilometers in space. The procedure that will place the spacecraft in an elliptical orbit, called the orbit insertion maneuver, will be performed on the 24th of this month when the spacecraft is 423 kilometers from the Martian surface and 215 million kilometers away from the Earth to rotate around the planet in a duration equivalent to 3.2 Earth days. Before the orbit insertion, the mission scientists will do a course correction procedure on the spacecraft on 22nd September. Scientists at the spacecraft's control center have already started uploading and verifying commands. Once successful, India will become the first country in the world to insert a spacecraft into the Martian orbit in its maiden attempt, and also the first Asian country to reach the red planet sphere. The Mars orbiter spacecraft, more commonly known as Mangalyaan, is India's first interplanetary probe launched by the Indian Space Research Organisation ISRO on the 5th of November 2013 with a budget outlay of 450 crore rupees. The spacecraft, which weighs 475 kilograms, was launched on board a polar rocket from the spaceport Sriharikota off the Bay of Bengal, about 80 kilometers northeast of Chennai. The propulsion system of Mangalyaan consists of a liquid fuel engine of 440 Newton thrust and 8 22 Newton thrusters that will help in insertion in Martian orbit along with controlling altitude and orientation. Mangalyaan also carries 5 scientific payloads with instruments that will be used to study the geology of Mars and the possibility of life on this planet. ISRO's telemetry, tracking and command network in Bengaluru have been continuously monitoring Mangalyaan since its launch. During the long voyage, the course of the spacecraft was corrected twice through a complex process called trajectory correction maneuver. This was carried out once on December 11, 2013, soon after the spacecraft crossed the sphere of influence of Earth, and then again on the 12th of June 2014. During the Mars orbit insertion maneuver, the 440 Newton liquid apogee engine propulsion system of the spacecraft will be fired to adjust the spacecraft's momentum to allow it to enter the orbit of Mars. The speed of the spacecraft will also be reduced to 2.14 meters per second from 22.2 kilometers per second for enabling smooth transition into the Martian orbit from the Sun's orbit on September 24th. The insertion operation will begin at 4:17 a.m. by first activating the spacecraft's 3 antennas for receiving and transmitting signals between Earth and Mars. At 6:56 a.m., the spacecraft will be rotated towards Mars, and 5 minutes later, when sunlight is not falling on the Martian surface causing eclipse, the thrusters beneath the engine will give the orbiter altitude control. The whole process will be monitored by ISRO scientists at the Deep Space Network at Bialulu, NASA's Earth Station at Goldstone on the US West Coast, and ESA's Earth Station at Madrid, which will confirm the insertion into the Martian orbit 24 minutes later at 7:54 a.m.
A recent UN study reveals that the ozone layer, which protects the Earth from harmful UV radiation, is starting to repair itself. Evidence show that hole in the ozone layer above Antarctica has begun to shrink. The improvement is the result of the ban on harmful CFC gases across the world. For more information, let us see this report.
The rapid deterioration of the environment is a major global crisis today. While the situation looks grim and hopeless, the recent findings of the UN group may bring a small ray of hope. According to a recent report of the United Nations, the ozone layer is gradually repairing and rebuilding itself. Evidence suggests that while the gaping hole in the ozone layer over Antarctica still exists, the hole has stopped growing and has begun to shrink in size. According to the United Nations Environment Programme and the World Meteorological Organization, if we continue to follow the necessary precautions, the damage done to the ozone layer by human actions may be completely reversed by 2050. Scientists have come to this conclusion after analyzing pictures of the ozone layer taken over years by NASA. The ozone layer present in the stratosphere of the atmosphere absorbs the harmful ultraviolet radiation of the sun and protects life on Earth. In the 1970s, scientists noticed that specific chemicals known as chlorofluorocarbons or CFCs emitted by industries destroy ozone. CFCs wore out the ozone layer over Antarctica, creating a hole. Depletion of the ozone layer exposes the Earth to ultraviolet radiation, thus increasing the rate of skin cancer, disrupting plant growth and destabilizing the aquatic food chain. Considering the perils, the world leaders came together and signed the Montreal Protocol in 1987, imposing a ban on CFCs and urging industries to develop safe alternatives for CFCs. Researchers say that the currently observed mechanism of heating of the ozone layer is an outcome of the ban on CFCs for the past 30 years. However, researchers also say that a group of banned ozone-depleting chemicals called carbon tetrafluorides is still being used illegally, and a large amount of this chemical is present in the atmosphere, which needs to be controlled.
Researchers from the Indian Institute of Scientific Research and Education have developed a novel liquid crystal gel that can be used to detect bacterial contamination. This novel gel could replace the blood of horseshoe crabs commonly used for such tests. This in turn can not only protect this endangered species but is also a less expensive procedure.
The researchers of the Indian Institute of Science Education and Research, ISA, have now developed a novel type of liquid crystal gel that can be used to detect bacterial contamination. This novel liquid crystal gel has been developed by a team led by Professor Shantanu Kumar Pal in collaboration with Nicholas Abbott of Wisconsin University. The technique, once fully adopted, will have a huge impact on pharmaceutical companies, medical device industries and food testing industries. The liquid crystal gel, commonly known as the LC gels, are special materials that have properties of both liquids and solids. They are commonly used in LCD screens and other applications. The unique LC gel developed by the ISA team can detect endotoxins present inside bacteria and thus help spot bacterial contamination.
Basically, a formation of liquid crystalline gels. We have prepared a new kind of liquid crystalline gel which could be utilized for detection of toxins which is present in the gram-negative bacteria. Right now, these toxins has tested for various pharmaceuticals, food testing and freshness levels, and people used to take the crab's blood, to take their blood and try to take it in the lab, and that blood gets coagulated in presence of toxin.
The LC gels will also have a huge role to play, especially in the conservation of horseshoe crabs. Conventionally, an endangered species called horseshoe crabs are captured and their blood is used to test bacterial contamination. But it is often seen that though the crabs are released into the sea after extraction of some blood, many of them die. However, there is a small constraint regarding the sensitivity of the LC gel, which as of now is a little less than that of conventional testing methods.
The Hanuman Language, a common sight in almost all parts of India, may belong to 3 different species and not just one. This discovery comes from the analysis of genetic data collected by the researchers of Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, who say that at least 2 to 3 different species of Hanuman Language exist in India.
Hanuman langurs, also known as grey langurs, are a nascent species of leaf-eating monkeys native to South Asia. Hanuman langurs are found in almost all parts of India, from the eastern coast to the Rajasthan desert and the western Ghats to the Himalayan forests. Until recently, it was believed that Hanuman langurs in India belong to a single species. But a novel study by a group of researchers from the Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru, under the leadership of Dr. Praveen Karant, provides evidence that at least 3 different species of Hanuman langurs exist in India. The group conducted genetic studies on the hair, tissue and fecal samples from 130 human langurs from wild and captive populations from across the country and has categorized the langurs into 3 species, namely Semnopithecus entellus, Semnopithecus hypoleucus and Semnopithecus priam. While Semnopithecus entellus is widespread and is capable of living in human-modified environments, Semnopithecus hypoleucus and Semnopithecus priam are largely confined to forested areas and face a great threat. The group also believes that besides these 3 species, 2 other species may be there in the Himalayas and in Kashmir. Earlier, in 1939, Hill, the British primatologist, had observed forest monkeys of Sri Lanka and had proposed that the Hanuman langurs, distinguished by their dark faces, should be viewed as multiple species. But in subsequent decades, other zoologists challenged that idea and classified Hanuman langurs into subspecies to explain their body trait differences and diverse habitats. The recent finding by the IISc team revives Hill's idea of multiple species of Hanuman langurs.
Cancer experts and senior physicians across the country gathered in a scientific program recently conducted in Bhopal to discuss various aspects of cancer and cancer research. The national conference was organized by the Indian Cooperative Oncology Network. Here is a report.
Cancer has emerged as a major health threat to humankind in recent years. According to statistics, 1 million new cases of cancer are reported in India annually, of which 500,000 people die. According to experts, the incidence of cancer is expected to rise 5-fold by 2025. In this context, the Indo Cooperative Oncology Network recently organized its 31st conference focusing on novel cancer research and treatments in Bhopal. More than 200 cancer experts and senior physicians from across the country participated in this scientific program. The conference focused on discussions on various aspects of cancer and cancer management. Doctors and students from various hospitals and medical colleges in Delhi, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Vellore, Pune, Jaipur, Chennai, Kolkata, Coimbatore, Allahabad and Siliguri, including the All India Institute of Medical Sciences and the Tata Memorial Centre, presented 40 research papers. 25 major institutes from across the country came together during the conference to develop an Indian guideline to manage febrile neutropenia, an infectious condition seen in patients of blood cancer and those undergoing chemotherapy. The Indian guidelines, based on the research and data collected by these primary institutes, will replace the currently followed Western guidelines and help in the better management of the condition in Indian patients. The deliberations also focused on the early detection and treatment of oral, cervical and breast cancers.
And now it is time to take a short break. We'll be back with more science news. Keep watching Science Monitor. Welcome back after the break. You're watching Science Monitor. Mars, the red planet, has always fascinated humankind. While various civilizations attributed various characters and myths to this planet, researchers have been trying to understand the unique physical and chemical properties of it. India's Mars orbiter mission is also soon to be accomplished by the insertion of Mangalyaan into the orbit of Mars this week. We will discuss and understand more about this neighbor of ours in today's In Focus segment.
As India gears up to launch its Mars spacecraft into the Mars orbit, let's know more about the mysterious red planet. To begin with, Mars is the fourth planet from the Sun, at a distance of about 228 million kilometers. It is known as the red planet because of its bright rust color, which is due to iron-rich minerals on its surface. These iron minerals in the Martian soil oxidize or rust, causing the soil in the dusty atmosphere to look red. Honoring its red color, Mars is named after the mythological Roman gods of war. Various civilizations have actually named this planet based alone on its color. The Greeks named the planet after their god of war, Ares. The Egyptians named it Her-Desher, meaning the red one, while ancient Chinese astronomers called it the fire star. Mars is a rocky planet, also called a terrestrial planet. Its solid surface is marked with volcanoes, crustal movement, and atmospheric effects such as dust storms. It has a thin atmosphere made up mostly of carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and argon. Compared to Earth, Mars has two moons named Phobos and Deimos. Since Mars has a cold, thin atmosphere, liquid water cannot currently exist on its surface. Therefore, though this planet is just half the diameter of Earth, it has the same amount of dry land. Like Earth, Mars has seasons, polar ice caps, volcanoes, canyons, and weather. A day on Mars, or the time it takes to rotate on its axis once, is a little over 24 hours. The planet makes a complete orbit around the Sun in 687 Earth days. Mars is much colder than the Earth, which is also due to its greater distance from the Sun. The temperature may vary from -153 degrees Celsius near the poles during the winter to as much as 20 degrees Celsius at midday near the equator. The red planet is home to both the highest mountain and the deepest valley in the solar system. Olympus Mons is roughly 27 kilometers high, about 3 times as tall as Mount Everest, while the Valles Marineris system of valleys, named after the Mariner 9 probe that discovered it in 1971, is as deep as 10 kilometers. Of all the planets in the solar system, Mars has sparked the greatest human interest. Scientists across the globe have been trying to know whether there was life on Mars and whether there is any such possibility in the future. The first person to watch Mars with a telescope was the famous Italian astronomer Galileo Galilei. Telescopic observations showed seasonally changing features and white patches at the poles on Mars. For years, it was thought that bright and dark areas on Mars were patches of vegetation. That means the planet might be supporting life and water existed in the poles. Actually, scientists have long believed that Mars experienced huge floods about 3.5 billion years ago, though nobody knows the source of this presumed ancient flood water. But initial missions to Mars, robot spacecraft in 1960s, Mariner 4 in 1964 and Mariner 6 and 7 in 1969 revealed Mars to be barren without any signs of life or civilization. In 1971, Mariner 9 orbited Mars, mapping about 80% of the planet and discovering its volcanoes and canyons. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA's Viking 1 lander, touched down on the surface of Mars in 1976, the first successful landing onto the red planet. It took the first close-up pictures of the Martian surface, but still found no strong evidence of life. Recent missions to Mars, however, have changed possibilities around Mars. In 2002, NASA's Mars Odyssey orbiter detected hydrogen-rich polar deposits, indicating large quantities of water ice close to the surface. In 2004, the Mars Exploration Rover Opportunity found structures and minerals indicating liquid water once existed at its landing site. Another mission, the Spirit, also found the signature of ancient water near its landing site. In 2008, NASA's Phoenix Mars lander became the first mission to touch water ice in the Martian Arctic. Phoenix also observed precipitation, that is, snow falling from clouds. In the coming years, more is likely to be revealed about Mars, since besides ongoing missions including India's Mangalyaan, more are planned. One of these is ExoMars by the European Space Agency, and another is Future Lander by NASA.
And And what are the contributions of science to this week's history? We shall learn in our next segment from the pages of history.
On 22nd September 1791, noted inventor, physicist and chemist Michael Faraday was born. He carried out vital discoveries in the field of electromagnetism. He also discovered diamagnetism and the laws of electrolysis. Faraday also started the practice of discussions for popularizing science. On 22nd September 1800, the English botanist George Bentham was born. He classified all the known seed plants at that time called spermatophyte based on his studies, which later served as foundation for modern systems of vascular plant taxonomy. On 25th September 1866, the famous American zoologist and geneticist Thomas Hunt Morgan was born. From 1904 to 1928, he carried out genetic experiments on the Drosophila fruit fly in Columbia University and proved that the genes are responsible for identifiable hereditary traits. He was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1933. On 27 September 1918, British radio astronomer Sir Martin Ryle was born. He developed the radio telescope system and succeeded in finding out radio resources with the help of the system. Radio telescopes made possible the discovery of many radio galaxies and quasi-stars. For his aperture synthesis technique, Sir Ryle was awarded with the Nobel Prize for Physics in the year 1974. On 27 September 2003, the European Space Agency launched its first space shuttle, Smart 1, from French Guiana to study the Moon. Smart 1 shuttle successfully launched a special solar-powered engine, clicked thousands of pictures of the Moon, mapped the mineral deposits on the Moon, and also found out the ever-glowing peak of Eternal Light mountain peak on the North Pole of the Moon.
Let us now have a look at some important science and technology activities happening in India and abroad in our Science Express segment.
Geetham University, Visakhapatnam has signed an MOU with the Bhabha Atomic Research Centre for research on gamma radiation. The MOU is part of the nationwide Environmental Gamma Radiation Monitoring Project. Under this agreement, the two institutes will work together to monitor gamma radiation in the states of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. As per the MOU, BARC will collaborate with Geetham University's project team to develop an in-house capability for the measurement of environmental radiation called thermoluminescence dosimeters and to statistically analyze the results. Indian origin researcher Dr. R. Kamal Baba has been selected for the prestigious Maidori Prize for Biodiversity for his outstanding contributions to the field of ecology and environmental research and conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity. Dr. Baba, who is one amongst the three winners this year, is the president of the Ashoka Trust for Research on Ecology and the Environment, India, and distinguished professor, University of Massachusetts, Boston. Dr. Baba and the other two winners will be awarded a wooden plaque, a commemorative gift, and $100,000 to support their work in safeguarding biodiversity at an award ceremony on the 15th of October in Pyeongchang, South Korea. In a novel research, scientists from Assam's Tejpur University and West Bengal's Vishwabharati University have isolated a compound called ferulic acid from a hibiscus species that can prove to be a cure for diabetes. The researchers have isolated the compound from Sthalpadma or land lotus, scientifically known as Hibiscus mutabilis and commonly called Confederate rose. Tests show that the isolated compound ferulic acid, when orally administered, restores insulin sensitivity of cells and thereby helps lower blood sugar levels in diabetic rats. Researchers are now working towards purifying the compound and assessing its toxicity to the human body. Two Indian origin scientists, Dr. Subhrangshu Mandal, Associate Professor of Chemistry and Biochemistry, and Dr. Krishna Rajeshwar, Professor of Chemistry and Biochemistry of the University of Texas, have been chosen to be honored by the Non-Resident India Welfare Society for their exceptional contributions to the fields of chemistry and biochemistry. While Dr. Subhrangshu Mandal will receive the Mahatma Gandhi Pravasi Samman Award at the NRI Welfare Society Conference in London next month, Dr. Krishna Rajeshwar will receive the Hind Ratan Award at another conference in India. In yet another effort to recognize and reward excellence in science, the Department of Biotechnology has announced the names of researchers who have been selected for the National Women Bioscientist Award 2013. Under this, Dr. Somdatta Sinha, Professor IISER Mohali, will receive the award in the senior category, while Dr. Mamta Chawla Sarkar, Assistant Director, National Institute of Cholera and Enteric Disease, and Dr. Anpurna Rangarajan, Associate Professor, Indian Institute of Science, will receive the awards in the young category.
That is all for this episode of Science Monitor. Do tell us how do you like our program. You can send your feedback and suggestions. Our email ID is news@vigyanprasar.gov.in. You can also write into us at Vigyan Prasar, C24, Qutub Institutional Area, New Delhi 110016. Well, that is all for today. We'll be back with fresh news stories on science and technology again next week. Till then, bye-bye and take care.